Hello and welcome to Box, the football talk show brought to you by Sportology TV with myself, Ali Drew. On last week's episode, we had Jay Daly from the United Stand who joined us, and we also had Lee Chappie, who is Leicester City YouTuber and, of course, the lookalike for Jamie Vardy. So if you haven't already, make sure you check those episodes out. They are some good ones. But on this week's episode, we are joined by a writer for the United Stand. He's a host of All for United, and he's also a member of the Barmy Army for Man United Women. We are delighted to be joined by Jonathan Foster. Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, really well, thank you. Been looking forward to this one now for a few days. So, let's get cracking.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Just talk to me about how you are, how sort of things have been for the last year. It's been a bit of a crazy year, but how have you been?
Yeah, look, lots of negative things, of course, and it's not great for football fans not being able to see your friends, to see the players who you look up to and admire and enjoy watching. But you do have to try and take as many positives from it as you can. And for myself, I've been keeping myself busy. I've been home for about 3 months of the 12 months on furlough. So for those 3 months, I began writing, as you mentioned. So I do write for the United Stand, mainly to do with the women's team now, but I do talk about the academy teams and the men's team as well. And not only that, I've started to do some YouTube as well. So I've been doing that for about 12 months on other people's channels. But quite recently, I've been hosting my own live shows, all based around our women's team, Manchester United women's team. And really enjoying that as well. So for me, just trying to make the most of some free time that I didn't really have beforehand.
Yeah, and I suppose, out of everything bad, you've got to make the most of it. The free time, for one, which no one would have had before. And also the fact that we've been forced to sort of learn more technology stuff. I wouldn't have had a clue what Zoom was before lockdown, or how to do an interview over Zoom. I just would have been like, well, no, I really don't like the idea of that. And now it's just so easy and obvious. It's crazy.
It is, and I've tried to explain to my dad about how to use YouTube so he can watch me on YouTube, and he's like fascinated about like green screens. I haven't got a green screen, but he's now seeing other people that's got green screens, and he's getting fascinated by it as well, and he's seeing like his TV programs where people are just doing things just like this, like whether it be Sky News or Sky Sports, he's seeing a lot more of it as well. So yeah, absolutely, it is forcing your hand, and for me, it's made me a lot closer to people that I maybe didn't see much of before. So, for example, fans of football, I might have seen them at the ground and said the odd word to them here and there, but now I'm speaking to them on a weekly basis on YouTube, if not a daily basis, some of the closer ones. So I do think that there's been some positives that's been forced upon us, and but of course I'm looking forward to getting back to those grounds and seeing the people in person.
Yes. And just talk to me about, obviously, you're a massive Man United fan and a massive Man United women's fan. And just talk to me about how you sort of got into, have you always supported United? And obviously you've not always supported the women's team, and I read that until 2018, I think there wasn't even a Man United women's football team. It seems crazy to actually think about that, but just talk to me about how you've sort of got into that.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So I've always been a United fan. One of my earliest memories was about 1992. I think it was Man United against Wimbledon, so the Vinnie Jones era, where we had our green and gold strip on. So yeah, about 1992 was one of my earliest memories. Grew up watching, obviously, Sir Alex Ferguson era, so very spoiled.
It was a very good era. It was the 90s were a great era for United.
Absolutely, yeah. That's when Arsenal was good as well. So I did enjoy that rivalry in the late 90s, early noughties. So yeah, I really enjoyed like growing up, my childhood supporting United. We only had to draw the game and I would get bantered. So, yeah, really enjoyed that. And then, obviously, as I got older, I started to branch out a little bit, started to learn a little bit about our youth players and our academy players. So I started to watch the under-23s at Leeds Sports Village, which is just outside of Manchester. It's in Wigan. And then shortly after, the women's team was announced that they would be, obviously, reforming. So playing at the same stadium as the under-23s, for me, I was really looking forward to it. Watched the first season on MUTV, just like half an hour highlights. Completely fell in love with the team. Really enjoyed what they was doing. Wanted to learn more about them, so I joined Twitter, trying to get a bit more information. And within my first season, I knew the second season I would buy a season ticket, and I did. And I haven't missed a whole match ever since League or Cup. So yeah, it's a good time to support United, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, because I mean, the rise in women's football it's been amazing over the last few years. It has been, incredible. And I know that the Sky TV and BBC now are wanting, they're getting women's football on the channels, which is just a massive step forwards, isn't it?
Yeah, for myself, I think it's a massive plus because one of my personal aims is to turn our attendance from 2,500 fans to the full capacity of 12,000 fans in that stadium. And I think to do that, we need to raise awareness. And what's more, raising awareness than having games on Sky TV. I'm fully aware that it won't happen overnight, but for me, if you start watching games on TV, you'll get loyal to the players. You'll learn who they are. Then all of a sudden, you might actually start going to a few games. So there are a lot of pluses from my point of view. Some fans do see it as negatives because the top two tiers will get stronger and potentially the bottom tiers won't get stronger. So there could be a big divide there at some point. Also, the kickoff times will be more to do with what Sky want as opposed to what it is now. So it's a bit more awkward for fans to travel. But all in all, I think it's going to be good for the game. From my point of view, at least. And
I suppose that's sort of a reflection of the men's game as well. The top clubs have so much money and they keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and it's harder for the other teams to keep players. So I guess it reflects the men's game, which everyone still loves, regardless of the fact they've got to kick off a certain time for TV. So, hopefully it'll work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But that's unfortunately what some fans don't like. So there are some clubs out there who haven't really got a men's team to support them. The likes of Durham or Lewis, which is in the second tier, the Championship tier. They haven't got a men's team to kind of bail them out. I'm lucky because I'm new to women's football. I started watching women's football when Man United women's began, so I haven't got that loyalty to that aspect. Where I do know a lot of fans who have followed women's football way before Man United, and they are a little bit concerned in some areas. But yeah, for myself, I think the saying is the cream rises to the top. And being a Man United fan, I want to see us playing in Europe, and I want to see us, wiping up all the tournaments, and hopefully one day we can get there.
And obviously now it'll be on, sort of mainstream TV. It'll bring more money to the clubs and also to the players, because other players, a lot of them not full-time players. They're having to work as well as train and play.
It's massive, and this is such a big deal that people don't even realise. So, the debate about the quality of football, but what people don't always realise is the majority of the second tier are part-timers. So they would be at work, grabbing something to eat whilst on the way to a football match. So they finish work at say 4 or 5 o'clock. They've got a kick-off at like 7 o'clock, 2 hours later, and they've got to travel. It's not that easy. So, yeah, absolutely. So in our first season in 2018 to 2019, we didn't start in the top tier. We started in the second tier, and we played part-timers. We was the only full-time team. Yeah, and this is a massive thing for us now. We want our players to be rewarded, not just Manchester United players, but anyone who devotes so much passion to the game, who are part-time. It doesn't matter if they're part-time or full-time. We want to see those players get paid more. We do shows on our podcasts where we talk about like dual careers. So players that we know that have had to drop a very good standard of job, maybe an average wage of say 30 grand a year. They've had to give that up, take a pay cut to become a footballer part-time, because that's the only way that they can improve and potentially fulfill their ambition to play in the top tier.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, because I suppose people don't see that side of it. They just see them playing, they think, oh, they're footballers, so they're going to be, that's all they do. Yeah. Football, same as you've got to be quite low down the leagues to be a sort of semi-pro male footballer. You wouldn't see anyone having a proper job as such. But in the women's game, it's just completely different. Yeah,
it is, and that's not, like you say, people don't realise that. So hopefully, first and foremost, the money can go to the players first, so they can have a better standard of living in that sense. But then one other thing that the fans do moan about a lot is the standard of refereeing as well. So the refereeing in the Women's Football League is kind of embarrassing. It's not at the level where we want it to be. So when it does come on Sky TV, I think Sky needs to kind of push it a little bit. Sky needs to push the FA and say, look, we want to raise the stakes here. We're pumping money in, but we need a brand. We need something that doesn't embarrass us, I guess. So I'd like to see the money distributed that way as well.
Why do you think that is, the sort of level of refereeing isn't the same? I mean, there's a lot of complaints about the men's refereeing game as well, but as a general, it's not embarrassing as such, but there's some dodgy decisions. But why do you think that it's not up to scratch? Can they not sort of use the same structure from the men's game to the women's game in refereeing?
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that the levels aren't there. So again, it's part-time referees who don't earn that much money. They're not at the level of Premiership referees. It's more like to do, I think I'm right in saying this, but it's more like to do with like the second and third kind of leagues in the men's equivalent. So they are kind of way off the pace, and the FA have quite openly said in the last couple of 3 months that there's no plans to improve the refereeing in the next 3 years. So that is quite frustrating for fans, because we haven't got VAR, we haven't got goal line technology, and some of the decisions are quite poor.
Well, on a positive for the Man United women's team, they played their first game at Old Trafford last week before, and that's sort of a sign of things to come for next season. Yeah,
so it took a long time coming. I must admit, I would like to have seen it sooner. We won 2-0 that game against West Ham. It was much needed. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a much needed lift for us. The players who scored was Lauren James, who's been with us from the start since 2018. A youngster, Rhys James, his sister, you may have heard. So one of our great talents. So we loved the fact that she scored that goal. And Kristen Press, World Cup winner, back-to-back World Cup winner from the United States, scored the second goal. So great publicity there as well by the goal scorers. And I'd like to see it back there next season, mainly just because we want to see how they would react to 50,000 fans as opposed to 2,000 or 3,000 fans. I think that's what I would love to see the players, get on a regular occasion. It's not going to happen, not yet. But for me, it's more important to fill the Leaf Sports Village, which is our current home ground. Let's get regular attendances there, 12,000 every time, and then we can start looking at going to that bigger stadium at Old Trafford. Yeah,
because I think that there was sort of talk of waiting until crowds could be back, so there could be some crowd there. But judging by the fact that we don't know when actually that's going to happen, they just wanted to just go for it anyway. But obviously, when they can go and there'll be some crowds, that'll make it even sweeter to be there. Yeah, it will. This season's kind of been a write-off when it comes to fans, hasn't it? We've tried to do our best to support the team on social media, and I think the players, in fact, and the manager knows that, to be honest. But yeah, absolutely. A game at Old Trafford next season. We've seen it at the Etihad at the start of last season. We got 33,000 fans there. So Man United we played our first game in the top tier against Man City. I was fortunate enough to be there, and it was a great atmosphere. We've seen the London teams do it as well. So it's definitely something that we'd like to see as fans, and that would be absolutely amazing for so many fans to sing our songs as well. And for people who, it's growing. People are getting more and more on board with the women's game. But for people who sort of aren't sure yet, what would you say from someone who has followed Man United, the men's team for your whole life? What sort of captured you from the women's game? What can they sort of look forward to if they start following it?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a Man United fan, so it doesn't matter if you're black, white, European, or from our home country, or male or female. If you're wearing this badge, I'm supporting you. It's as simple as that. And I think a lot of fans are like that. Now, I wouldn't go, I wouldn't go talking to any sexists out there, because their mind's already made up. So I don't want to bring them across. I don't want them in the stadium, if I'm honest. I want fans who are very similar to me, fans who are a little bit want to be educated, who want to learn a little bit. Come and watch our shows, come and watch rival shows, watch any shows you want. Learn a little bit about them. Once you learn about them, you'll get that bond with them, the same way as you do with the men's team, same way I did. And then once you come to that stadium, the amount of passion that's there with the women's game, it's not about money. We've already said at the start of the show, there is no money. This is about footballers who've grown up watching, whether it be a women's player or a male player, wanted to be in their footsteps, and now our players are in those footsteps, and now they're role models, which is great. Great for the kids who come to watch because they see our captain, Katie Zellum, or homegrown players like Ella Toon. They want to be those players. And also, more than anything, it's the relationship between the players and the fans. So after the game, you get to have those autographs, you get to have those selfies. You're so close to the pitch that you can shout to them and they can hear you. You can put a tweet out on Twitter, and because there's not as many fans, they will probably read that tweet. 9 times out of 10, it's a good thing because it's a positive comment. It's just a completely different ball game when it comes to love. It's like a two-way thing. It really is.
You don't want it to get too big, otherwise they won't respond all the time.
Yeah, well, we're getting that way now. So with Kristen Press and Toby and Heath coming across, 2 massive names in women's football, it's grown. It's grown a lot, and there's a lot of spotlight. There's a lot of social media now, and the players need to suddenly learn how to adapt and learn how to take criticism more now, because there wasn't much criticism, if I'm honest, on social media when I first started, because not many people spoke about them. Whereas now, all of a sudden, 2 World Cup winners come across, the spotlights on Man United. If those 2 World Cup winners aren't in the starting 11, all their fans are saying, well, why is these players playing and not these players? And it's becoming a bit like the men's team where you're competing against each other, which I don't like, to be honest, but that's part of the game. If it's going to grow, that's going to happen, isn't it? So yeah, I don't want it to get too big, but I do want to fill up those stadiums, and I want to give the players the songs that deserve, the volume that they deserve, and I think we're getting there slowly but surely.
And just talk to me about this season. Obviously, Man United are in 4th at the moment. At one point, it was looking like there was a sort of chance for them to sort of fight for the title, but currently they're in 4th, and I think the titles we've not got long left in the season. Talk to me about that, being in 4th and how you think the season's gone for them.
Yeah, it's definitely been an up and down season. So at the start of the season, it was announced that the top 3 teams would get into Europe as opposed to the top 2. So absolutely fantastic. We finished 4th last season, which was brilliant. Our first season in the WSL, we finished 4th, which was a real good achievement. So of course, as fans, we wanted to finish in the top 3 this season, one step higher and go into Europe. And for a long part of that, it looks like top 3 was easy and it was actually going for the title. And then we had a load of injuries over Christmas in January, a load of injuries, all in the same positions. We talk about Liverpool, the men's team having injuries. This is exactly the same as us. And it did really affect us. We've gradually slipped down. We've lost, I think, 5 games out of 9. 3 of those games were tough. There was against the top 3 teams, so that's understandable. But the other 2 teams we should have won. And if we had have picked up points, it would have been in our own hands to get top 3. Unfortunately, now I've resigned to the fact that we probably won't make top 3 now. I can't see Arsenal, who are in 3rd, dropping all those points. But at the end of the day, it's still an improvement on last season when it comes to how close we've caught up, we've closed the gap. But having been doing so well for so long, it would be a disappointing end to the season, of course, yeah.
And do you think that the team now and the way that the sort of teams bonding and progressing, really, even though if you finish in 4th in the same position, it's a better performance. Do you think that it bodes well for next season and that you can push for the title shot?
Yeah, I'm not blinded by the fact that we've got some fantastic players and we was top for a reason. We was the best team from September to January. Simple as that. I'm a big believer that the league doesn't lie. So we was top for a reason, and we was playing some real good football. We had a very strong bench because we had such a strong squad. And I think a lot of those players will still be there next season. But I do think that, as always in the women's game, some contracts don't get renewed. Some players will move on for their own benefit as well to get a bit of game time. So I do think maybe 4 or 5 changes will come in, which may not necessarily strengthen the starting 11, but it may help the squad depth. I do believe that the current starting 11 could rival anyone, and I think we saw that in the first 4 or 5 months. But we do need just a few more additions just to help us out a little bit going into next season, where next season the top 3 would have to be a must, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. And how important is it, do you think, for you as a fan of the women's game, to see so many women generally in football having so much more opportunity? Obviously, the women's game is getting so much more publicity. You're seeing, I think, the first female referee in the men's game in the League Two match, refereed the other day. And there's female pundits now. You know, Alex Scott's on everything. You know, how good is that to see?
It is, because at the end of the day, if you're good enough to do the job and people want to watch you, then you're going to, you know, it doesn't matter what gender you are. So for me, it's really good. Inside the stadiums, I would say it's mixed. You know, it's not just women that go there, it's the men's as well. It's children, it's very family orientated. But regarding like the publicity, absolutely. You mentioned Alex there, absolutely. There's our ex-players who are now starting to go into punditry, whether it be on MUTV, BT Sport, Sky Sports. And this is one thing that I do hope that we see going forward on Sky Sports. We need to see commentators and pundits who actually know the game. So there's an app called the FA Player, and this is where we can watch live women's football for free if you want to watch the games. And those commentators just do not know enough to get the names wrong, and it's really embarrassing. It's good that we could actually, as fans, watch the game, which is great, but the commentator is awful. I'd hate for Sky TV now to suddenly put people in there who may be well known but don't know about the women's game. I like them to maybe have a season off, learn the women's game, learn the players, learn the squads, know what I'm talking about. In the meantime, get some of the ex-players, which will obviously be the females who know the players, know the game, know the tactics, know the managers. Give us a bit of history, give us the education that we want, and then we can like see who's the best pundit for the job then.
Definitely. Well, before we finish, we always ask our guests this question, so I'm going to ask you in two parts. So first of all, who is the greatest player that you've ever seen play live? So from the women's game first, and then from the men's.
Okay, women's game, I would probably say Leah Galton. Leah Galton, our left winger. She was brought up in Leeds, went to America on a scholarship, done really well, played at Bayern Munich, and then she's ended up at Man United. Absolutely a joy to watch. She's exciting. She takes people on. She crosses. She scores. She's grounded. Our manager says she's the best left winger in the WSL. I agree. There's no player for me that gets you out of your seat more than Leah Galton. And I think on the men's team, I'll probably say Ryan Giggs. Huge fan of Ryan Giggs. Again, left winger, similar attributes. I like exciting players. I like players who can take people on. So for me, that either would probably be Ryan Giggs. Yeah.
He is a Man United legend as well, isn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
Jonathan, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. Great to hear your sort of thoughts and a bit more about the women's game. I think it just needs as much publicity as possible. And hopefully we can get you back on and talk a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Great to be joined there by Jonathan Foster and to talk a bit more about the women's game. But guys, stay tuned. We have lots more coming up, loads of guests who have booked to come on the show. So please continue to do what you can to support the channel. Subscribe, like, share, leave some comments, whatever you can. We do appreciate it, and we will see you next time.